Just because of an incident during the tattooing process, the Japanese Yakuza boss immediately showed extreme indignation. "I will tattoo a large hole in your stupid head. Do you believe me?" The tattoo artist urgently responded, "I don't mean to offend." Immediately, a subordinate brought an envelope. The Yakuza boss arbitrarily opened it without understanding the contents. Unexpectedly, a strange stream of black sand flowed from within. The tattoo artist standing next to him was immediately terrified to his soul when he witnessed this scene. Receiving that letter, one could survive for little more than 2.5 seconds. The only reason he escaped death was because his heart was abnormally positioned on the right. Thanks to that, he was fortunate to preserve his life. While the Yakuza boss was mocking the old man, a subordinate standing next to him suddenly had half of his head cut off. Bright colors and brains splattered all over the floor. The young girls were extremely scared, their faces turned pale, and they screamed incessantly. Before the Yakuza boss could react, the electric lights suddenly went out. The base was plunged into complete darkness. Everyone immediately panicked, quickly picked up their guns, and pointed nervously at the surrounding darkness. Suddenly, a subordinate was dragged away by an iron chain that appeared from nowhere. In an instant, his body was torn apart like shredded paper. This bloody scene broke everyone's courage. Everyone shot their guns wildly at all directions. Bullets flew out like rain, tearing through the air. Where the bullets arrived, debris flew. Although the firepower was strong, unfortunately, it did not work. The enemy seemed to be symbiotic with the darkness, lurking like a devil in every corner. They used the darkness as a screen and silence as their blade. Their hidden bodies evaded sight. They moved as an illusion without noise. Every time they acted, there was only a cold light. It was impossible to find their traces, which made people unable to grasp nor prevent them. The thugs of the gang kept falling in turn. In a short moment, the scene, which was noisy and chaotic, became dead. Only the Yakuza boss stood alone in a pool of blood, so afraid that he lost control of his bladder. When the target was completely destroyed, the dark shadow of the assassin, who was seen only in glimpses and always hidden in the darkness, gradually appeared. 57 years ago, the old man was lucky to escape death, but this time he was no longer lucky. Perhaps you have been curious about the notorious assassins in the world. Everyone's attention often focuses on the CIA and KGB, arguing that they are the embodiment of danger. However, they did not know that in the hidden corners of history there was still a mysterious force. It was an assassination corporation of ninja assassins. For thousands of years, it has been called the Ozunu Clan. Their members are trained in hell from an early age. Their body fat percentage is controlled below 3%, and their muscle fiber density is 3 times that of normal people. Taking a person's head in the dark is easy for them. Regarding their history, we need to go back to the turbulent Japanese Warring States period. At that time, ninjas intervened in the power struggles through secret assassinations and intelligence gathering. From the public struggles between great lords to the results of important battles, they all had their shadow. However, several centuries have passed. This organization not only did not disappear over time, but on the contrary, it expanded its evil forces globally, penetrating everywhere. To this day, they have quietly built a huge network under the surface of modern society, a so-called complex dark empire with 9 branches of ninja subordinates. It is like a huge matrix that covers every corner of the globe, with the purpose of effectively carrying out assassinations across the country and countless other illegal activities. In short, their influence and power size are so far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. And all these dark activities are under the direct control of the current Ozunu master, who is the supreme leader of the entire corporation. The members absolutely obey his orders, considering his will as the only compass for all actions. Behind this obedience is a chain of ruthless control. Every year, Master Ozunu has his subordinates travel all over the world to find blind orphans with considerable gifts but no one to rely on. He will tell them, "You were born to serve me and will die for me." When the children are brought to the corporation's secret base, what awaits them is extremely brutal training sessions of inhuman intensity, from testing their physical limits to learning assassination techniques, from using weapons to infiltration and escape skills. Every training session is full of danger and pain. Even a small mistake will result in severe punishment. Therefore, these children have to endure great physical and emotional abuse, but they cannot escape because they have no relatives. They can only completely rely on the organization that gave them this chance to live, making them completely obedient. The corporation continuously brainwashes them every day, causing them to gradually lose themselves in fear and respect. Just like that, these once innocent and simple children eventually become Master Ozunu's most loyal and obedient pawns. They willingly volunteer their lives and face danger for him in the dark world. Among these newly joined blind orphans, Master Ozunu especially favored a young man with a look of insight. He immediately noticed the boy's difference. If polished, he would definitely become a sharp blade for the corporation. So, the great master personally gave him the name Raizo, a name symbolizing the inheritance of strength, before officially starting training. Master Ozunu transmitted all the knowledge he had spent his whole life researching and comprehending to these children, without keeping anything back. He told them that to become an absolute, perfect assassin, they must overcome
the control of the body and the pain. This is an indispensable path to becoming a ninja. After saying that, he pulled out a sharp blade and, without any expression, slit his own palm. However, a strange scene appeared. The wound that should have been bleeding did not have a single drop of blood coming out. The master closed his eyes and mouth and began to chant mysterious ninja spells, while at the same time he waved his hand and created a seal in the air above his fist. When he opened his palm again, the wound had completely healed. This is the way of the ninja. The path of ninja cultivation is extremely arduous. The daily diet is as simple as it could be. On the dining table, there is always only a bowl of rice mixed with bland water, making the children always half-starved. High-intensity training in this condition is an extreme challenge to the body's ability to endure. But in this difficult situation, their bodies continuously transformed and gradually adapted to hardship. From then on, they became even more resilient, building a body as strong as steel. In addition, the master also arranged one-on-one matches for them. Through this competitive mechanism of survival of the fittest, he selected children with excellent physical and psychological qualities and fighting skills. The winner would be eligible to climb the ladder to the top, receiving more brutal training sessions. But once they failed, the fate that awaited them was often extremely tragic, either being killed by the victor or being banished. Losing training opportunities was a milder punishment. The most dire was that abandoned children were forced to self-destruct. During this process, all means to destroy emotions were thoroughly used. The children were taught to dismiss all weakness and sentiment, retaining only cold assertiveness. Emotions were considered a burden. Kindness was considered weakness. Year after year, their hearts gradually became as tough as steel and as cold as ice. They showed no pity for the death of others. One can imagine that after such cruel conditioning and training, the people who emerged from this bloody system would be cold and cruel assassins. Becoming a top ninja is so difficult. Take a look at this guy. Since he was young, he trained to hide himself. If he made even a small footstep, he would be beaten on the soles of his feet by his master. Even though he was beaten to the point where the flesh was torn and bleeding, the boy still had to grit his teeth and endure the piercing pain, completing the training session without missing a single step. But late at night, the wound began to cause a heart-piercing pain, as if there were countless sharp blades stirring together under the soles of his feet. Making him endure torment, he could only grit his teeth and bear it. Witnessing this situation, his senior sister secretly took ointment and quietly bandaged his wound. Even though the organization's rules were extremely strict and absolutely did not allow members to express emotions, this hidden warm moment made Raizo realize that he was more than just a simple killing tool, but a human being of flesh and blood. Over time, Raizo gradually matured through continuous hard training. The difficulty of training also constantly increased. The master started arranging for him and his brother Takeshi to train the ability to adapt to the environment in a field that hung countless fire bridges. However, Raizo lacked sharp tricks. During the confrontation, he had an opportunity to seriously injure his opponent, but because he was merciful, he did not act cruelly. As a result, he failed because his brother used fire to attack suddenly. Takeshi was seriously injured in the head and did not immediately stand up to continue, but lay motionless on the floor. This was definitely a second serious mistake, because the master taught them since childhood that human weakness lies in the body, and only by conquering pain can one surpass the body's limits. To become a qualified ninja, one must first have an iron will and extraordinary endurance. One must be able to quickly adjust one's status and continue fighting in any wound or difficult situation. Raizo's recent attitude made his master extremely disappointed. Immediately, he personally punished him, making him truly feel the ultimate pain, the feeling of being crushed. All the brothers and sisters thought it would be difficult for him to get through this long night. But they didn't know that Raizo was undergoing a transformation in both soul and body. He constantly pondered and comprehended in pain, constantly recalling the master's teachings in his mind, trying to find a breakthrough opportunity from this hell. Until the next morning, the master opened the door and saw Raizo calmly sitting firmly in front of the door like a Zen master. Obviously, he had grasped the secret of the method of no pain. Since then, the master set him on a unique cultivation path. Each year, he would have to give up one sense to further improve his body's potential and train the sharpness of his mind. The first year began with vision, the sense he relied on the most. This meant that he would lose dependence on light and darkness and could only rely on other senses to feel the outside world and fight. He had to fight with the master while blindfolded. However, without visual support, Raizo's reaction clearly slowed down a lot. He could only rely on his memory and intuition to reluctantly dodge, continuing to fail like that. Raizo gradually adapted to the world covered in darkness, and his other senses also became extremely sharp. Next, Raizo gradually found his own fighting rhythm and was no longer as confused as at first. Every move that Master unleashed, he could easily stop by hearing the sound of the location. His reaction speed constantly improved, and he could even counterattack. At this moment, victory or
defeat was clear, and a rare expression of recognition appeared on the master's face. That day, Raizo accidentally caught the little sister stealthily cutting the forbidden iron rope from a tree. This action certainly violated the rules set by the teacher. If discovered, she would certainly be imprisoned in the dark. However, the young master did not mind. It seemed that the iron rope she cut was not just a constraint on the tree, but more like a chain on her own heart. The next day, the match took place according to schedule. The young master excelled in defeating her brother from the sect. As a rule, the loser suffered physical pain. This is the law of the clan, aiming to make each ninja mature in suffering and draw power from failure. Then, the master held out a sharp blade and signaled the younger sister to stab the loser. She hesitantly took the blade and looked at the monk and the sect member lying on the ground, their faces covered in blood. In the end, she still couldn't bear to do it and threw away the blade. The master's face immediately turned gloomy. He picked up the blade and slashed it hard at the little sister's face, immediately creating a bloody wound. But the punishment did not stop there. She was then forcibly locked into an extremely narrow cage, exposed to harsh sunlight, her limbs completely unable to straighten. Not only was there no food, but not even a drop of water was given until nightfall. Raizo had a chance to sneak up next to the cage in the dark, as in childhood, to bring water to the sister's mouth. He advised her to give up opposing the master. However, a few days later on a rainy night, a fierce noise awakened Raizo from sleep. He habitually looked at the little master's bed opposite, but only saw an empty one. Thinking the worst, he immediately rushed out to find the young master, who was intending to flee. The little sister did not want to return to that lightless life anymore. She urgently invited Raizo to escape with her, to find a world that belonged to the two of them. However, Raizo chose to stay, because the Ozunu clan had long become everything in his life. Hearing Raizo's answer, a glimpse of disappointment flashed in the little sister's eyes. She didn't say anything more, just gently approached and left a meaningful kiss on Raizo's cheek. After parting, she climbed over the fence and ran away crazily into the mountains and forests. But it was not easy to escape successfully. The Ozunu clan's patrols were everywhere, covering heaven and earth. In just a few moments, her traces were discovered, and almost immediately, countless ninjas from all directions rushed to surround her. The next day, the little sister was tied to a pillar, symbolizing humiliation. Following the master's command, the senior brother immediately raised the ninja knife and, without any hesitation, stabbed the tip of the knife straight into the junior sister. After a loud scream, the little sister no longer breathed. Raizo witnessed this scene with his own eyes, filled with hatred. A vow for vengeance was etched in his mind from that day on. Many years after the teenager Raizo was helplessly witnessed the murder, he had now completely transformed into a standard ninja. To check his academic achievements over the years, the master decided to give him an extremely challenging and difficult task. The mission's target was a thug wearing a vest, a gold watch, and smoking a cigar. Not far away, Raizo, disguised as a sanitation worker, quietly approached. In this action, he gave up common weapons, hiding only a thin blade in his sleeve. Then, taking advantage when the opponent was caught off guard, he suddenly stabbed the blade hard into the thug's neck. He did not expect the opponent to counteract with a spinning punch, directly sending him flying and causing him to cough up blood. The strength of this thug could be compared to Marvel's Juggernaut. Not only did he have immense strength, but even when stabbed many times, with blood seeping out, he still acted like nothing happened. Raizo was beaten dizzy by the thug, and his whole body was covered in blood. He could only tightly grip the small weapon in his hand and frantically stab at the opponent. Although the dagger was small, each blow was fatal. Finally, the thug, due to severe exhaustion, completely lost the ability to resist. Raizo seized this golden opportunity and successfully performed a lightning-fast counterattack. But right now, what he felt in his heart was not the glory of victory as his master had said, but instead was taken over by fear and a strong sense of guilt. Remembering the moment when he was immersed in violence, he had lost his reason and his eyes were full of killing intent. It was no longer Raizo with his own thoughts and feelings, but he had turned into someone else, a killing machine driven by rage and survival instincts. Even he himself felt that his face was scary and was filled with fear. Raizo couldn't help but have the idea of defecting. But with his current strength, he was completely unable to confront the entire Ozunu clan, so he had to continue to be patient. To test Raizo's loyalty, the master escorted a female ninja in front of him. With a serious face, he announced he would give him the honor of carrying out the punishment. This scene immediately reminded Raizo of the brutal behavior of the great brother towards the little sister years ago. The scene then was clearly visible, and at this moment the ninja was kneeling in front of him, looking at him with hopeless and pleading eyes. Raizo understood in his heart that his master was forcing him to once again strangle his own emotions. He gripped the weapon, but could not.
Action, because he deeply knew that killing her would mean killing the last shadow of the little sister. It would be the complete destruction of the final emotions deep inside him. So Raizo chose to protest. And at this moment, he was no longer a controlled tool, but a flesh and blood human being with feelings and emotions. Following their master's orders, the surrounding ninjas immediately drew their swords and rushed to attack Raizo. Even though Raizo tried his best to swing the weapon he was most skilled at, trying to open a path to survive, in the end, it is difficult for two hands to fight against many. Raizo quickly sustained many wounds from sword slashes, and blood flowed profusely. His body couldn't support itself anymore and collapsed. At that moment, he seemed to see death calling him. However, the thought of the little sister's injustice not yet being resolved made him unwilling to die. He struggled to stand up and wanted to risk his life, but the next moment, countless darts came like a torrential rain, instantly penetrating his body. After a sharp pain throughout his body, Raizo lost his balance. Unable to control himself, he quickly fell from the roof of a building hundreds of meters high. Perhaps fate was on his side, as there just happened to be a lake below. After escaping death, Raizo began a long and bitter life in exile. He fled to Berlin and hid in the hidden corners of this city. During that time, he continuously trained himself. Every day, he regularly pressed his palms tightly against a nailed steel board and performed handstand push-ups for 10,000 reps just for core strength training. After finishing, he quickly ate a bowl of rice mixed with water to regain some stamina. Then he immediately rushed to practice ninja hand-to-hand and chain swings at least 1,000 times. Finally, the indispensable ninja technique of throwing darts. Over 20 years, more than 7,000 days and nights, he had repeated the same throwing motion countless times. Now his muscle memory was deeply ingrained. Even though he was blindfolded, he could still make the dart hit the target without missing a beat, showing off the demeanor of a top ninja. But if you walk at night, you might encounter ghosts. Even though Raizo was careful enough, he still couldn't completely hide his tracks. He was faced with a request for help from a beautiful woman who sought to turn the tide. Ordinary people would certainly be enchanted by her charm and find it difficult to escape. However, Raizo was unmoved. He immediately saw through the other person's identity and which of the 9 clans she belonged to. Seeing that her plan had been revealed, the beautiful woman didn't hide it anymore. She directly pulled out a weapon and stabbed it straight at Raizo's weak point. However, she clearly underestimated Raizo's strength.
At that moment, the store owner heard the sound of a fight and rushed out from the inside room. There was not a single person at the scene, only a washing machine that was shaking non-stop. The store owner approached suspiciously to take a look. He just saw the beautiful woman who had been fighting with Raizo now stuffed into the washing machine drum. Recently, strange assassinations have continuously occurred. The European police organization quickly noticed something unusual. Out of curiosity, female agent Mika began to investigate. As a result, she discovered a strange rule. Every time an important character is murdered, there will be a transfer transaction of more than 1 million USD. Mika realized that this matter was definitely not simple, so she immediately went to visit the wife of a national security agency employee who had been assassinated. Through a conversation with this woman, she learned that the employee was forced to quit his job just because he investigated some matters that should not have been involved. Since then, his mental condition had rapidly deteriorated, becoming extremely unstable all day long. Doubting everything, he locked every door and window in the house with 2 layers of insurance. In addition, he also installed a large number of cameras, motion sensors, and bright lights around the house. However, even that could not stop the enemy who wanted to take his life in the dark. 2 years had passed. During that time, no one dared to ask, and everyone stayed away. Only Mika was brave enough to dig deeper. The wife was extremely impressed with her courage and gave her a top-secret file and a videotape that her deceased husband had left behind. After getting the clue, Mika brought the box home. Inside the box were all documents related to the history and origin of the Ozunu Clan. A thick set of files recorded countless information about this mysterious clan, from its founding until now. As for the videotape, it showed the scene of the ninjas attacking the employee's house, recorded by a surveillance camera. There was a person dressed in black who was blocking these ninjas. Zooming in on the screen and looking closely, the person in black is none other than Raizo. It turned out that he and this employee had once had cooperative negotiations, but unfortunately, in the end, Raizo was unable to protect this employee. When the investigation went deeper, the superiors who had granted Mika the authority to investigate also suddenly became a target. Of course, it was the Great Master who trained him into a weapon. 20 years ago, Raizo was young and was brought into this dark world. The Great Master used devastating methods to teach him to overcome pain, causing him to endure inhuman torment through countless days and nights. Now that Raizo stands here, he is no longer the controlled puppet he was. He wanted to let this respected master personally experience what real pain was like. In just a moment of combat, Raizo's weapon was destroyed by Master Ozunu. He couldn't help but feel heartbroken. Looking at the disabled weapon in his hand, he realized that the opponent before him was much stronger than he imagined. At this moment, the master stood up and suddenly escaped like a ghost into the darkness. The next moment, he appeared behind Raizo and slashed his back hard. The gap between the two was clearly not on the same level. The master took advantage of the situation and threw a powerful punch that directly sent Raizo flying several meters away. No matter what moves Raizo used, the master always easily neutralized them, as if he knew every move Raizo would make. Raizo was not pleased. He took a deep breath, then stood firmly with his legs wide, his 2 hands clenched on the sword, ready for battle. After regaining his posture, the match between the two of them immediately intensified behind the sliding door. In the narrow space, the shadow of the sword was dense and bright red blood shot out. As soon as Raizo swung the sword towards the master's figure disappeared like light smoke. Raizo was surprised, but soon became wary. Thanks to his previous experience, he quickly turned to retaliate. This time his reaction was fast enough, and he launched an intense attack, with his master not even showing weakness. The two of them fought back and forth. The unpredictable changes made it impossible to determine a winner. At this moment, Raizo suddenly came up with an idea, letting the master taste the feeling of a blow to the stomach. The master groaned softly, and a mouthful of old blood spurted out. Raizo took advantage of the victory and launched a powerful spinning kick. But who would have expected his master to recover so quickly? In just a split second, he adjusted his state and slashed at Raizo hard. As Raizo was about to continue fighting, the master again used shadow clone techniques to disappear without a trace. This is the pinnacle that the current Master Ozunu has reached, and also the true nature of the ninja. Their movements are uncertain, like images and shadows that are both real and virtual, making it difficult to distinguish. With the current techniques Raizo held and his understanding of the ninja way, a deep chasm still existed between him and his master that he could not currently cross. Just when his master was about to kill him, Mika promptly fired 2 bullets to save Raizo. But Master Ozunu burst into anger. His figure suddenly flashed and turned into an afterimage behind Mika. Before she could react, his knife pierced toward her heart. Whether it was the gentle little sister from the past or Mika lying in a pool of blood now, they were both the only warm light and attachment Raizo had left in this world. Now both of them had died by his master's blade. But Raizo did not fall into crazy anger because of that. On the contrary, this heartache stimulated the potential power deep inside him. His master was surprised. He could no longer sense where Raizo was. The path he cultivated had always emphasized the inner self, reaching the empty realm of unconscious thought. He said that only by dismissing all concepts could one reach a state of hidden explosive power in fighting. However, Raizo now broke the rule, following a separate path to enlighten the truth through remembrance. These were unique tactics motivated by his nostalgia for the little sister and Mika. These emotional connections, weak in the master's eyes, became the key to Raizo's awakening. It also proved that human nature cannot be completely erased. When the defensive fight ended, Raizo was filled with sorrow, thinking that Mika had died from his master's fatal stab. He held her body and slowly walked out of the dojo. However, upon closer inspection, he discovered that Mika still had weak signs of life. It turned out that she was also an extremely rare person with her heart on the right side, and her master's stab had not hit a truly dangerous spot. Seeing that Mika was okay, Raizo quietly turned and left. The nature of the Ozunu Clan's operations in the movie Ninja Assassin is like a dark implication of a dictatorial system. This violent organization, disguised as ninja culture, relies on psychological manipulation and physical training as an industrial chain that turns people into killing tools. The fact that members must undergo daily training intensity and a working regime is completely akin to the 996 schedule in modern society. Both are using systematic violence to erase emotions and personal dignity. However, the film does not stop at telling a simple story of using violence to treat violence. Through Raizo's journey of rebirth in the fire, it raises a deeper question about destiny. When violence becomes a person's most familiar way of communication and struggle, how does one break this cycle and use non-violent methods to interpret the truth of freedom? When the system you live in turns you into a monster devoid of humanity, can you still steadfastly maintain the final limit within yourself and walk with dignity to the end of your life with the honor of a human being? The director, in the end, gave an answer full of Eastern Zen. Raizo threw away the gold watch that symbolized his past glory and ties, completely breaking with his violent past. But he did not choose to hide and avoid reality. He cut the rope that tied the plant. He witnessed with his own eyes the moment life regained freedom, but did not try to intervene and assign it a new life trajectory. He ended up standing on a crumbling wall, staring off into the unknown horizon. The entire scene refused to offer a clear destination. This incomplete story design breaks away from the crucial logic of evil begets evil in traditional action films, subverting the audience's expectation of a common outcome. Actually, freedom has never been a destination that can be achieved once and forever, but a difficult process of constantly freeing oneself from chains. Each effort to escape leaves new scars on the body, but each scar proves that, despite being under the heavy pressure of a violent system, humanity can still grow with resilience in the cracks. The value of a movie lies in its message. The value of a movie comment lies in the feeling. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching the movie. What are your thoughts on this movie? Please comment below.